Welcome to our final episode on the church. We're so glad that you've taken this wonderful journey with us. David, today we are looking at this, this vivid description in Revelation. Tell us, what is the context of this? Where are we in this passage?
Yeah, it's hard to determine those sorts of things in the book of Revelation, by the way. It's not linear. It's a vision given to John. But in this particular passage, what we see is this vision of the end of all things. So temporally, this is like time out of mind. This is time immemorial. This is some day in the distant future when God will have come and set all things right. And then we get this lens into the beauty and the gratuity of our life with God forever. So the timeline here, the context is the future. This has not happened yet. This is a different thing than what we've studied over the past 10 weeks. We've looked at images of the church here on earth, our sort of struggles, what it looks like to be a body of actual human beings and people. But here we get to something that is not yet. And that's different. So this is going to be something we might perhaps long for and have tastes of, but we don't see fully yet. So this is to come.
I loved the use of the word gratuity, this superabundance, and that points us towards this idea of feast. Can you tell us about how it is that feast is a figure for the church?
Yeah, Marjorie, that's a key insight there, because this is a sort of different figure. All of the other figures, you'll notice, there is an object, like a body or a vineyard, or there's some item that defines what the parameters and what the church looks like. But here, we're not talking about an image of the church like that. We're talking about an occurrence. This is about an occasion. So this is less about like defining what it is to be the church or what it isn't or is the church. And this is about something that will happen to the church. It is more a sort of culminating moment in the life of the church, to which all of those other figures are headed. So that's the first major way to think about this. It's not a figure of the church as such necessarily, but an occasion in which the church and her beloved come together. Now, the second reason I think this is so critical for us is we've gone through some challenging stuff. We've talked about corpses. We've talked about exile. We've talked about bodies and vineyards that need pruning. There's been difficult material, but the end result, the last moment that will be forever for the church's life, is this banquet of perfect union. So even in the episode where we talked about body, remember there's a sort of difficulty in talking about the head of Christ and the body of Christ, which is us, because we think, well, how is it that we're connected? And in some ways it's a mystery. Paul himself calls it a mystery. But here in this moment of feasting, there is no more mystery. Like, we don't have to ponder the kind of union that's being established here. This is all of the people of God coming together, being permanently married, bound to their master, who is God himself. And so that's the second reason, is it's a figure of immense hope. And then third, because feasting is everywhere. It's all in the Old Testament. And I think one of the things that encourages us to think about, we see, feast had halfway up Mount Sinai in Exodus. We see feasting done in the Acts of the Apostles. There's all kinds of feasting. What it tells us is our life is filled with these moments that are sort of proleptic, that cause us to turn our vision forward toward what's to be had. So the scriptures are full of language of feasting and famine, of great abundance and need, and it's propelling us all forward. Even when we have feasts in our own liturgical life, Christmas, Easter, these seasons, we are meant to imagine the day ahead of us when perfect peace, perfect rest, perfect satisfaction, perfect abundance, perfect fellowship with our Maker is established, and this great wedding supper of the Lamb.
Well, It's been such a wonderful journey and the sort of build up over time of these different images. And I know people will be interested in sort of rethinking about them in the context of this final feast. I think of the bride and what her place is at the feast. I think of when we talked about the Lord's Supper and how that is a prefigurement of this feast that we get to enjoy weekly. Is there anything else that you're particularly thinking about in terms of this culmination idea?
Yeah, so I encourage y'all, and the questions will go into this, to read carefully through this passage, especially the invitation that is sent to all the saints. Because there is an image in here of every single one of our previous chapters in some way. So the more you explore and press into this, I'm not going to do all of that for you here because some of the delight is you actually exploring it yourself. But all of what we have already discussed and explored about the nature of the church all culminates here. I'm not going to say more. I think you need to try it out. But it's all there. Spouses, bodies, vineyards, everything is set. Wine. Just pull one thread and watch the whole thing unravel. But this is the culmination of Christ's work in and through his people. So be on the lookout, I say.
It's like a treasure hunt.
It's like a treasure hunt, exactly. You will not be disappointed.
What would you say just are some clear takeaways from this passage for us? One of the basic convictions which we wanted you to ponder is the way in which church is not simply kind of one reductionistic thing. For instance, like church is not simply building. It's not simply the gathering of people. It's all of these other things. So that's one. The church is about what God is doing in the world. And this is what he is going to do. So there are all of these other complications. God is creating this people who are meant to reflect his image in the world, but why are we so bad? There are all kinds of things that will leave us baffled, but this one is the clear end goal of what God is going to do. And so I would encourage you to take hope in that. Look at what God is about to do. This is what he has for you. And he's doing it now. He's already starting it. And then the final thing I might encourage you to think about, and this one is hard, is the unmeasurable joy of the wedding feast. This is the great marriage supper of the Lamb. This is a feast that's about two people, two bodies coming together permanently in fellowship and enraptured by one another. This is about food. This is about wine. This is about celebration. This is about all of the bad things becoming untrue. And so one of the things I would hope you might ponder here is how all of the amazing things that you've experienced even now might just be a tiny shadow or foretaste of the goodness to come. And so the church, you see, it is not, again, simply about how we establish our orders together, our relationships with one another. It is about the way in which God is leading us, shepherding us to this great event where all of our lives will make sense, where everything good will be held up, and we'll have perfect satisfaction with God the Father. So I want you to think about that and ponder that, let that rest down in your soul. Fall asleep to that image. So those are the two takeaways. The story of the church is, in fact, a story that will and can inform your life, especially if you know that the ending of it all is this one. I guess those are the two takeaways I'd add. Well, thank you. So enjoy your meditation on this beautiful, hopeful image of what God has been doing and is doing and will do in the life of his church that he loves as his beloved.